there's some of the anniversary watches. There's like some really rare stuff. I've got a boron carbide GT launch watch. This was for the launch of the solar beam AMG GT. Only 25 ever made of that watch. We have this one, for example, is AMG Petronas Formula One management watch. It's a perpetual calendar that is set correctly for 570 years, and that comes in the Petronas colors, and we only made 50 of those. Well, then the carbon fiber Petronas chronograph, which again is like Toto and people like that, where you may ever had 100 of those. Lewis Hamilton editions, one-offs and stuff. So there's also quite a lot of interesting.
Well, that's great, because I have this one of 25 dots, so I'll send that to you, and you send me one of those watches, and I think we'll be even. So perfect.
Everybody, this is a Lamley showcase. And no, this is not the showcase. Yes, it's my face. No, I don't show it very often on the Lamley YouTube channel, but here it is, because this is a very, very cool, very special video that you are about to watch, and I wanted to give you a bit of an introduction. For two reasons. Number one, this is a Zoom interview that I did several weeks ago, so I was mid-quarantine, the beard was out of control, so was the hair, so prepare for that. I've cleaned up a little bit. That's number one. Number two, this is a really, really cool interview that I know you're going to enjoy with Chris Grainger. Now, who is Chris Grainger? Chris Grainger is the CEO of IWC, the Swiss watchmaker. Now, why are we having a conversation on this channel with the Swiss watchmaker? This is why. This is the Hot Wheels Team Transport Euro hauler with Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. We have seen this. I've showcased it already on the channel. But there's a really cool backstory about this collaboration between, yes, IWC Racing, their racing component of IWC, of the Swiss watchmaker, and Hot Wheels. And I wanted to get that story, and Chris was willing to come on and have that discussion with me about that collaboration. But that is not all. You will enjoy all the background on the set, on the car itself, and how this set came to be in this collaboration. That's one. But number two, Chris is an avid, long-time Hot Wheels collector, and he knows his stuff, and we geek out throughout the interview talking about not only this set, but all the cars that he likes and that he collects, and we get into it. And if you don't have an appreciation by the end of this video for models like, say, the Aston Martin DBS from Hot Wheels, I'd be very, very surprised. So, enjoy this. This was recorded a few weeks ago, like I said. We'll get into it. You'll see a bunch of cool models. You'll see his awesome collection. And, of course, background about this. So, everybody, enjoy. Chris Grainger, CEO of IWC. It's nice to finally meet you. And this is quite a surprising chat to be having. This is not one I expected even a few days ago to be. If you told me I was going to be talking to the CEO of IWC, I would say, why? With a big question mark. But we have a whole lot to talk about. And I'm really, really thrilled that you're joining us. You are in Switzerland currently.
Absolutely. We're in Schaffhausen, Switzerland. That's the east end of Switzerland, 45 minutes from Zurich.
Awesome. And you're just like the rest of us, pretty much confined to being local.
Absolutely.
At this point.
With the added attraction that we have a border lockdown, and obviously Switzerland is landlocked in between about 10 other countries, what feels like at the moment. And where I am here in Switzerland, you can't venture further than 1.5 miles to hit the German border. So you can imagine at the moment, whether you're out on your bike or whether you're driving to get groceries, you can't go anywhere because the borders are locked, and we're literally sort of stuck here. It's quite a different experience, but hopefully 11th of May, as it looks, we'll be back to some sort of normality.
Good. As well. Well, let's get right to it. The reason we're talking, the reason we've connected, and I don't know how this comes off at Zoom, if it comes a little backwards or not, but it's this Hot Wheels set. You've got it too. And you have good reason to have it because that's your company all over this set. This is the new Team Transport from Hot Wheels. And
Absolutely.
obviously, a lot of people are familiar with IWC, but we can start there for those that aren't. And why, you know, this IWC Racing, and there's this really cool Mercedes brand new casting in it. Well, let's just say what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this set. We're going to talk about IWC and this collaboration, how this came to be, not only with Mercedes, but then down to Hot Wheels. And then here's the fun part of this. We're not talking to the CEO of IWC because this is some sort of promotion thing where it's like you can say, oh, we're thrilled about this and give us a lot of corporate speak. You're as much of a die-cast Hot Wheels nerd as the rest of us, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's been absolute essential, or everything that I was able to learn from your blog over the years, you know, the opinions you form on diecast, the way you expand, you know, some of the stuff, Mad Manga, I would have never looked at that casting twice had it not been for your background story and your knowledge of Japan and all the rest of it. So this has been incredibly helpful, and I enjoy following all your channels a lot and have done so for years. So thanks for sharing all that insight and novelty release stuff with us all the time.
Well, you're welcome. And I think that's, I mean, it's a trip for me that when you find out who's been reading your blog and also who actually listens to you when you say you think something is cool. So let's talk. And I think this is cool, whether that means anything or not. This is, you know, I already opened it for the YouTube channel. I've got to photograph this thing too. So I think in order to explain this set, this Team Transport set and this licensing agreement with Hot Wheels, let's talk about IWC and its role in motorsports at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're a mechanical luxury watch company from Switzerland. We're the only luxury watch company with an American founder. So our founder, F.A. Jones, came from Boston back in 1868, 152 years ago. Yeah. And he crossed the Atlantic aged 27 to set up a watch company that would combine Swiss craftsmanship with American technology. And that's still very much how we operate. And really, over the next 150 years, we developed a lot of watches in aviation, car racing, navigation. So it's always been the universes of classic watch application that inspire us. And from there, we started venturing into motorsport. Back in the 50s, we made actual timing devices for the Grand Prix in Bern back in the 50s. And our technical director, he really started at the time to look into anti-magnetism and wristwatches and really came up with some great innovations in that sense. And that meant that we were always interested in motorsport and motorsport watches. And formally, I think we started mid-2000s to be really engaged with Mercedes globally, starting a partnership with AMG, starting a partnership and a sponsorship with Mercedes-AMG Petronas when they took over from Mercedes GP back in the day, not with Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg driving in Formula One. And then, of course, the whole story of Toto being a good friend of mine and Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas and all our sponsorship of that, but also Mercedes Classic, and had the immense joy of racing the Mille Miglia in a 300 SL Goldwing a couple of years ago, which is amazing.
You did?
I did.
You drove it?
Yeah,
wow.
I drove it together with Jens Thieme, who's the head of marketing for Mercedes back at that time. And it is an incredibly scary experience because, you know, especially when the Germans do it, they're racing.
Right.
You've got the speeding tickets 10 months later from the little Italian communities. No, but it's serious, and you've got no helmet, no seatbelt, no brakes, no lights. So chasing some open-top Ferrari over a pass road at night in the dead of night is one scary experience, but so much fun.
Imagine.
I mean, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and I was so lucky to be able to do it. But anyway, from there, we sort of expanded all our different associations with Mercedes. You know, our clocks are actually as a spec option in the AMG models. You can get an IWC clock in the center console. And from there onwards, we really started to look into our own bit of racing. We became the sponsor of the Goodwood members meeting in the UK, which is one of the first big classic car events in the season. And I launched my own classic racing team there with David Coulthard driving, ex-Formula One driver, in a 300 SL Goldwing, which is just a fantastic car for this sort of event. And I think it was there I actually started walking around the paddock and seeing a lot of the cars that, have you lost Peter? We've got Peter.
There we are.
I've seen a lot of the cars in Goodwood that I actually have in the Hot Wheels collection. And this is one of the Greenwood Corvettes, the Mustangs from the classic vintage racing series. They had a lot of that, even NASCAR stuff like that. Long tail McLaren GTRs, all that CLK GT1 stuff, you know, the crazy sort of aero cars. And I think it was then for one day, we've got to make a Hot Wheels of the IWC car. And that was sort of my first bit of thinking that went into that.
So the seed was planted.
The seed was planted, and then I had a chance encounter with Manson from the Hot Wheels design department about a year ago, I guess. And I come to LA practically once a month, and we agreed to meet, and I was lucky enough to visit Hot Wheels HQ, and the guys were amazing. They actually had mood boards up of all our cars, you know, the GT3s and the different AMGs and the classic stuff and Formula One cars. I was like, wow, you guys have done your research. And from then onwards, you know, we hit it off, and it was clear that we were going to do something. And they said to me, simple, why don't we do like, you know, your 300 SL in the team transport? We're planning a casting that looks a bit like the hauler you're using, and it's a non-licensed, but why don't we develop that? And it's amazing. I mean, I was blown away, and we had a real blast developing the project from there.
So they developed, I've got it right here too, their Euro hauler. And this is the first time that they've released this one. So they were working on it anyway, and they said, let's run with it for IWC. And then the 300 SL, the Mercedes, and I'm just going to open this up.
Yeah, and actually that's a completely modified casting that hasn't got the bonnets that you'd find on the street version. So this is really the racing version, which looks exactly like the 300 SL that we're using in the racing team. And actually, if you were to open this up, you'd see it even has the bucket seats inside. So Manson's created the bucket seat interior, which is not standard on a 300 SL. But actually, in our car, we have modern, obviously, racing standard bucket seats and harnesses and so on. And if you look at the interior, you'd have to take it apart probably to see it properly, but it has got the original racing seats that we have in the car. So the level of detail is just out of this world. And then we created the livery together. So Steve Van from Hot Wheels together with Nick Schmidt. Little shout out to Nick Schmidt, who's our graphic designer, who worked a lot on the holographics and the 300 SL graphics, and the way that we actually got this into the tampos on this scale, like the tiny little IWC and AMG logos and so on. It's just the work they've done on that is amazing.
Yeah, I noticed that it's really precise. They've gone to, I don't know, what techniques they use that might be different than the standard, but yeah, it is. And this is a replica of the actual car. If you go on, and I'll show some pictures on my blog of the car. This is it. And I was reminded when I did the video, Manson texted me very quickly while he was watching it and said, it's not based on the RLC. The RLC was a completely separate build, and that one has, and I didn't even notice the bumpers. I didn't even put two and two together outside of the opening doors. This casting was completely built from scratch as well. So it's like racing spec, all that kind of stuff. And and it's a stunner.
Yeah, I shouted the same thing on the screen when I watched the video. I said, no, it's not.
So I've been corrected, and that's one of the reasons we can talk and I can make that known. Totally different casting.
And funky detail, the 68, so obviously that's a Hot Wheels number, but we're founded in 1868, so our number is also 68, which is exactly 100 years apart, so it made total sense.
We were introduced by Jimmy Lou from Hot Wheels, and one of the things that Jimmy told me as he was talking about you was like, hey, this guy's legit Hot Wheels collector. Like, he geeks out, and it's true. I mean, you've got a fantastic collection. You're able to show me a little bit of it, and talk to me about that side of things. Like, this wasn't I want to turn this, let's find out about branding with Hot Wheels. You already had a passion for that, and where did that come from?
Well, I think the way that I think, I'm very much a brand storytelling type of guy. That's my background in design. It's always about you creating an object, but you're creating a story. And I think what I liked with Hot Wheels, which is actually very similar to what we do with our watches, is the fact that it's more than just an exact replica of a car at 164. It's a statement, it's a sort of an interpretation, and it tries to capture a story that speaks about speed, that speaks about coolness, that speaks about all the things that kids want to be. And I think this is what really the difference is to a lot of other diecasts, is that evocative power that is in that little car. And that's something that I rediscovered. I mean, I played with cars were my thing, apart from Lego, obviously, back in the day when I grew up. And then when my first son, I have 3 kids, but when my first son was born back in 2009, I started to think, okay, he needs a toy car. And I entered into the supermarket and literally hadn't looked at Hot Wheels or Matchbox for so many years. And then suddenly, I think the first one I ever bought was probably the Camaro convertible concept, 2008, 2009, and the electric blue with a white interior. It's not a particularly great car, but what it did, it got me back into this whole idea of, wow, this looks so much faster than just a toy car. It looks really like mean and purposeful. And
yeah,
I got back into it, and I started to just have a little sort of MS tie box of maybe 10 cars I kept in pristine order, and then didn't want them to bump around too much. And we took them to play dates, and they're color coordinated in there. And then it was a shelf in his room. Then it became a shelf in my bedroom. And from there, sort of it built, and I had my home office back in the UK, and then probably it went into the hundreds. And from there, then it went to what it is now, and I'm sure it's only going to continue to grow from here. But it's just, I love the fact that you can walk around the collection, and it gives you so many stories. From the Bond stuff to the movie cars to the Back to the Future time machine to all these little things that you discover when you travel, that you see, and that are somehow represented in Hot Wheels. And you could never have this in a real life garage, let alone ever afford it.
Right.
But in that miniature sense, I think it's so much storytelling packed into one spaces, and that's really what connects to the way I think, the way that we think about watches. Where, of course, a big pilot's watch today is a sports watch and is a statement, but really it harks back to the original pilot observation watches from the late 30s and early 40s, where you needed that chunky crown to be able to use it with gloves. You had that big strap that was over the flight suit so the watch wouldn't fall off. The legibility you had in the big pilots, which meant you can read them while flying an aircraft. And all that, this little bit of the idea of being a fighter ace just comes with a product, even if I wear it to the office every single day. And I think that is where we connect very much to the way that Jimmy and the team are thinking. And that's why I think we got on straight away as well.
I completely agree with you on that. And one of the comments Jimmy made was like, he was like, it's funny that someone who runs a company that is all about precision. I mean, and I mean, as scientific, as precise as it gets is Swiss watchmaking, right? And IWC, and this same person is so into these 4-piece $1 basic Hot Wheels cars. And I that doesn't surprise me, actually, because I mean, there is some technical marvel in a Hot Wheels car, maybe not at the same level as your watches, of course, but to keep these cars within the range that a kid can just pull off the pegs anytime and be excited about it. And I like that you mentioned that, because I think one of the things that I really like about collecting is the stories, whether it's the story of the car itself, the connection to some sort of history that it has. Obviously Hot Wheels will do current cars and vintage cars. They've been playing with, the fact that we have the 300 SL right now, and then, like the 190E, just talking about Mercedes specifically, that the 190E, I don't have any connection to, other than the fact that it does harken back to when I was younger, and I thought it was one of the coolest cars on the planet. I never drove one, I never owned one, nothing like that, but there is a connection. There's something that makes me like it. You actually mentioned it too. I brought it out, the period correct version.
Definitely. Yeah. I love the story of this. I mean, first of all, it's one of the quintessential performance Mercedes. I think the other one for me would be the CLK 63 Black Series from 1996, 7-ish.
Yeah.
No, a bit later. No, sorry, 2006 that was. Sorry, 2006. The 63 engine V8, and it's one of the best driving Mercs. Plus, these cars had that purity of styling that made them mean and fast looking, but they weren't overdone. They weren't like flaps everywhere.
Right.
It's really a design that stands the test of time, and I think the 190E very quickly became an absolute classic. Same what happened to the CLK Black Series. It's just so understated. And when you get that balance right of performance and pure design, and you get to that timeless beauty bit, that's what really strikes me. And then I did a podcast with Hodinkee. Hodinkee is one of the biggest US watch blog, probably based out of New York. And they suddenly, out of the blue, asked me about Hot Wheels. And I have no idea how they made the connection, because I'd never mentioned it anywhere.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, Chris, we hear you're a bit of a Hot Wheels collector. Is there anything, is there like a holy grail that's like been really hard to get hold of? And I told them the story how I tried to get onto the period correct website when Brian launched the 190E.
Yeah.
And I was actually flying back from somewhere to Heathrow, and I had to set for the time zones my alarm on my phone to be there 5 minutes before, add to basket. And I just explained how difficult it was to get a hold of that thing. And literally 24 hours later, I had a message from Brian saying, we should meet up, and it was amazing. And then a couple of weeks later, I was back out to Costa Mesa, and We grabbed dinner, and it was amazing to see his studio. And now we actually started to collaborate on some stuff for our boutique concept for the lifestyle store. It's
Awesome.
just the way you can make connections with Hot Wheels is just amazing. So it's one of those things.
That is so interesting. I love this car. Period Correct is a fantastic brand. Another surprising collaboration that
Absolutely.
that has been great.
Brian,
for both.
He's big into his architecture and design, and he has amazing sense of taste. And it's so much fun when you can combine design, cars, automotive, merchandising, fashion. It's a blast. Love it.
I've been learning that, and I've been learning that on the fly as I've gone since I've started covering this. And that's kind of the element of things that I'm so excited about just from covering all this at this point. Yeah, I think, we were talking about this, and I've just had this group of cars here. Some of these that you mentioned. You're talking about, like, we could talk about the story of the car itself, but then one of the other stories, and I love to tell this for like super treasure hunts, for example, people will say, oh, why doesn't Hot Wheels just make these super treasure hunts available? I could buy them, online for just a few dollars more. And it's like, well, that's no fun. The fun is encountering one. And you mentioned a couple, I think. You found, how many supers have you found? Because you're out there looking too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found 3 supers. One of them was at Hamleys in London, which is sort of that world's biggest toy store thing in London, Regent Street. I found that Dodge fire department thing with I can't even remember what model
Charger?
that is. It's a Charger, yeah. It's a Dodge Charger in the Spectre Flame red with fire livery. And then I found the 2005 Mustang GT, the golden one, the standard Mustang GT, right here, 10 meters from the office, together with a regular treasure hunt. And then the one that I haven't found any non-licensed supers either, which is lucky, because I wouldn't be collecting those. But I actually found a 510 Wagon Super, 11 o'clock in the morning, main Swiss supermarket, on the way to the airport, hanging front of peg, being there completely like as nothing ever happened. I carried this to the checkout, and obviously they're not $1 in Switzerland, but she went like $2.99. I said, yeah, I'd gladly pay you $2.99 for that. So that was amazing, and then obviously knowing how hot this car was at the time, to just see that hanging there like that was just brilliant. And you're right, I mean, you can buy supers on eBay and all sorts of other places, but it's nothing like actually finding one. So it's always a special moment.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've got, I can actually look at all of the supers I have and that I found, and I can tell you exactly when, where, and how. And that's really fun. I've got some other cars here. Like we'll stay with this Mercedes thing for a second. That you had mentioned a couple that you have stories associated with them. So I brought out CLK DTM here.
You can see the inspiration, right?
Yes, yes. I was actually putting them together while I was preparing for this call. I was putting the car in the truck myself. So
yeah. No, absolutely. The CLK DTM was one of the first Hot Wheels that I bought back in 2009. I think the version I found in a supermarket at the time was kind of a mid blue with a light blue and red detail and a chrome interior. It's probably the worst version of the CLK DTM.
It is,
to be honest.
It is.
But that was my starting point, and I looked at the proportions and the stance of that car, and I just loved the way that the concept of that car comes across in 164. It's obviously a lot more crazy than the real thing. I've seen one in Miami at Watches and Wonders not long ago.
Sure.
It's quite a lot tamer looking in real life, but I love what Hot Wheels have done to that, and that really for me was really putting a focus on the Mercedes castings as well. There's been a lot of great Mercedes castings since.
I'd love to see this one back, actually. I think it's but I don't know what the tool is. You had me pull out a couple of Ferraris, actually 3 Ferraris. I've got some of the cars that you have. I actually have in storage right now because I'm redoing my whole display. But I did pull out Speed Machines F599 XX. I'm using make sure I got the camera. Here's the 430. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, the Speed Machines was special because back in the years when the Chinese distribution and Hong Kong distribution for us expanded massively, we did so many trips to Hong Kong. And there's a big Toys R Us that sits at the end of the pier of Ocean Terminal. And from the Mandarin Oriental, where I stay in Central, you have to get on the ferry, cross over, walk all the way to the end of the pier, and then into the Toys R which point you have to deal with that endless music on repeat, you know, when they play I Want to Be a Toys R Us Kid every 30 seconds, and after 20 minutes you completely lose the plot. And obviously I always used to arrive there at 7 p.m. at night, completely jet lagged, check into the hotel, be hit by the humidity and the heat, and venture out again and go to Toys R Us, which is, you know, typical executive evening, I guess. And of all the trips I did, the only sort of really meaningful car that I was missing, I've never found before, was this one. And that 599XX, the red, the classic original Ferrari livery. Love that casting ever since. And obviously that was unique. I've never seen that on the pegs ever again, one-off. And that really was a starting point for me to collect all the Ferraris, including the races, which were before my time, but I had to eBay puzzle them together, which I managed over the years.
And you filled those in. Yeah, they're great. I saw that you had the 430 Modena.
Yeah, and this is just so cool. Very pure. As I said, I don't really collect the sort of crazy livery, crazy print Ferraris. All of the more sort of the stock stuff, definitely.
And then you had mentioned and I actually think this is a wildly underrated car, is the Ferrari FF.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we did a Top Gun fair exhibition booth back in 2012, which was a whole recreation of a Nimitz class carrier. And as a centerpiece, I had a defense contractor in Newport News next to the docks where they build the carriers. I had them make the only civilian Super Hornet cockpit replica with an integrated flight simulator. And I took thousands of Navy photos and tried to puzzle this thing together. And we built this like 7-meter long full cockpit mock-up. And I went out to Newport News back in 2011 to pick it up and do the final sort of tests on it. And that was the first time when I was traveling, I actually stopped at a Walmart and I found both versions of that FF with and without the horse in the same Walmart at that time, which was amazing. And that really sort of started off my Target and Walmart trips in the US when I'm out and about, and also really started for me to always be driving in the US. Apart from New York City, everywhere else I get in a hire car. We've done some really cool road trips, sort of down from Fallon all the way back to Santa Monica and across Colorado and Aspen to Beaver Creek and back to Denver and also. And that's where across the rural supermarkets that you always refer to in your blog posts. Though I'm not nearly as lucky as you are with finding supers and the likes.
Well, the only difference, and I'm not as lucky as I used to be because I'm not on the road as much as I used to be. But here's a formal invitation. Next time you're out here, once all this goofiness ends, get out here to Utah. We'll road trip this through some of the rural markets because you're going to see some beautiful country. I don't know if you've seen Zions or Moab, Arches, all that stuff. I've
never been to Salt Lake City. I've only stopped over in Salt Lake City. I haven't explored Utah, but I've always been meaning to go. So I'll definitely.
Well, you get out. We'll do this. It would be fun to hit some of the rural Walmarts and see how lucky we can get. That'd be kind of fun.
So I went to the Family Dollar in Leadville, Colorado. So that's as rural as it gets.
You've done that. Those are my favorite finds too. Like my daughter has always wanted to find a super, and she found one at Dollar General in Taos, New Mexico. And how great is that as a place to go? And you are invited to hunt at Walmarts with me. I'm not nearly as lucky as I used to be, just because I don't get out as much, but it's pretty fun. The rural Walmarts, that's a gold mine. So to find all the good stuff. So
this is the one constant thing I'll never understand. Supermarket distribution, stocking, restocking. It's all over the place. I don't know why at times, some supermarkets just drop everything for 3 months. It happens here in Europe, all over the place as well. Actually, the most reliable source I have these days is there's a little duty-free toy store at Zurich Airport. And they restock entire cases, and they do it fairly frequently. The only problem with that is they're $5.99 each. So every time Jimmy says to me, "Why the hell are you paying that for?" I said, "Because it's not $1 in Europe."
Yes. You get what you can. You get what you can.
Remember that Chiron last year, that Bugatti Chiron took the whole year, and I made it my mission. And literally on the very last day of the year, 31st of December, the very last shop I tried, where I bought some stuff for New Year's Eve in the UK, in Plymouth and Morrison's, and there was again another 2020 sort of A case, B case, and behind there was another sealed box of a P case. And there it was, the two Chirons, the only ones I had found all year. Took me to the very last day of the year to actually make it, but there we are.
But you got it. See, there it is. They just told another story. So that I'm trying to think, like my last great find. Nissan Skyline Super Treasure Hunt, and it was at
the green one, or
gray.
The gray.
It's gray. Here, I got it right here. Dollar General, so one of those small little stores. And I don't want to throw these folks under the bus because it's in Moab and they don't keep it very clean. They need some stocking professionals. But I walked in and saw some on the pegs, and I started flipping through it, and I pulled it out. It was way in the back in the shadows, and to me it didn't look like the Super, so I put it back, and then I checked again and realized it was the Super. So that was my last fun, which was kind of fun. All right, there's some other cars that you had me pull out. This one I thought was really interesting. You asked for you mentioned the Aston Martin DBS.
Yes.
From Hot Wheels. I also am. I actually think the Hot Wheels looks better than the real car, and the real car is gorgeous.
By far.
And tell me why you wanted to pick that one out. Why you singled that one out.
The DBS for me was the first Hot Wheels that I came across in mainline that I felt was as luxurious, at least as a real car, because that DBS has a perfect stance, and it rides so smoothly. It's so heavy. It actually feels like an Aston. Like, there's some cars which weirdly sort of, when you hold them as Hot Wheels, they don't have much to do with the real thing. But right. The DBS, the silver one, when you hold it, when you roll it across your desk, it feels like an Aston. It rides smoothly as an Aston. And that is something which captured me. I thought, wow, how did they do this? It actually has the swagger and the elegance of the real thing. And that's when I started to really get into the DBS and obviously all the other Aston castings as well. But for me, this is still stunning. I mean, that interior is not my thing, but the silver is beautiful.
It is so funny you mentioned that. I'm not kidding. It is just because I've had that same feeling. Like, why does this run so smooth? It has that kind of, and I got my desk below me, but it has that kind of bounce that certain Hot Wheels have. But you're right. It just, I don't know what it is about the design of that one, but and it's gorgeous. I actually like it's a little wide, and I've always been a big fan of that one too. And it was a bit of for those of us that collect Hot Wheels, an Aston Martin DBS was not something at the time that it was released. I think around 2010, it was not something that you expected from Hot Wheels. You expected a lot of muscle car, which are great, but that was definitely a departure. And we've seen a lot of the cool Euro cars kind of follow suit. So yeah, I'm glad you're giving that some love because it deserves it. That casting deserves a ton of that love. So you mentioned, and I can actually show this if I can go get it, the Zagato, right? The DB4.
Yeah.
And I don't have that one in front of me, but talk about that one.
Well, I think it's just, I mean, this is probably one of the most valuable Aston Martins in real life. I've seen a couple of replicas of that at race meetings. I'm not quite sure if there was ever an original one because I think they're multi-million if you actually have a DB4 Zagato. It's weird that it existed in a kind of thing. I think they did 2 Hot Wheels versions of that, and then there were there's a black blue and there's a green one or something like that. But really only a couple of versions. And as I'm very intrigued by this stuff that sort of appears just once or twice. Now, nobody really knows why, but it disappears again. And it's also when you buy new mainlines, you never know what's going to happen. You're going to see 25 releases, and they're all going to be almost similar, like sort of a Camaro police car or something like that. Literally one and gone or 2 and gone. And I think back in the day, some of the things we've taken for granted, like the BMW MZ4, that GT thing with a big wing. There's only a few releases of that in the end. Remember, like tons. Right. And it's always amazing when you pick them up and you think they're everywhere and then it disappears and you look at it a couple of years later, you look back and think, wow, that's rare. And I always enjoy coming past these things in my collection, and the DB4 is definitely one of those. I only have the one and there haven't been very many.
I only have one too. It's the Chase from Classics, and it's and I don't quote me on this, but I think it's Mark Jones. And Mark Jones, I don't know if you met him when you were at the design center. Based on what I'm noticing is your taste, he's the guy who will throw out, he does all of the car culture designs. Yeah. And so, I mean, he did the 190E and he did so many of these others, but he also has this affinity for cars like the Zagato and the Alfa Romeo, the B189, like all that kind of stuff. And he And so sometimes these weird things that will just kind of appear and you're like, where did that come from? You just kind of assume it's Mark Jones that did it. And he's a really talented designer.
Cool. Yeah, and then the movie cars, of course, and that's also something which I think is fantastic to have. Hot Wheels and Matchbox to a certain extent do these movie cars is great, and there's always connections there, both from the Top Gun side and the Jurassic World side, and then obviously with Manson's love for the DeLorean, and just bringing that all together, the diecast, the real cars, and the story. It's just amazing.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Fast and Furious being kind of the core of that at this point, and I'm assuming you're also talking through like these movies kind of just like Hot Wheels does, introduces you to maybe some cars you weren't familiar with. And Fast and Furious has done that. Top Gun, I've been looking at the Top Gun set because I got my hands on the Matchbox sets.
Yeah.
And we don't know the role they're playing in the movies yet, but there's an Aston Martin in there. There's some like Mustang, things like that. But you're like, wow, this is kind of cool. Have you seen those Top Gun Matchbox?
If you look very carefully at some of the official movie pictures, you might also spot an IWC if you look very carefully, or two.
Oh, so there's a little. Oh, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the trailers. Okay, I will for sure. Thank you for the hint. Speaking of movie cars, you also singled out Matchbox, so going from Hot Wheels to Matchbox and Jurassic World and their work with Jurassic World. Obviously, this one makes a ton of sense. You guys are affiliated with Mercedes. Obviously, Jurassic World and Mercedes have a very, very strong relationship. Talk about this one.
Well, I loved the ML when it was released. This was the first sort of real sort of SUV, what you'd call an SUV today in Europe, at least, was clearly the ML. And when that came out quite quickly after they launched the ML, they did the 320 in the Jurassic Park Lost World. And when I saw the design drawings for all the cars in Lost World, I was amazed. This sort of military off-road thing, the modifications, it made that, grocery getter SUV suddenly look incredibly cool. If they were somehow to be road legal in Switzerland, and you cannot imagine how crazy the regulations are here, but I would have totally built one by now of these 320 Jurassic replicas. I think it's just the coolest thing. And then, of course, that car sits in the Mercedes Museum in Stuttgart, which I visit quite frequently when we're over there for meetings. And every time, and I'm fantasizing, one day I will ask them to actually be able to sit in this, take the Matchbox, put it on the dash, and just have the whole package together.
Do it.
Because these cars are just unreal. And then we had the opportunity for the first Jurassic World to do an IWC watch store in that main shopping arcade that sits in the Jurassic World Park.
Yeah.
And this was shot out in New Orleans in the Six Flags car park. They built that entire section of Jurassic World, and I went out there to actually merchandise the IWC watches, finish the store and all of that. And it's amazing to see. I mean, this is a $15 million outdoor set. It's done to absolute perfection. The Starbucks had all the napkins in it. It was all fitted out, and even the Brookstone and all these stores, Ben and Jerry's with all the furniture inside, all the bags. Amazing to see. And then again, that was the launch platform for the GLE 350 Coupe in the day. And I remember I actually raced back to one of the supermarkets there in New Orleans and bought a couple of plastic T-Rexes, took them to the set, actually took a picture in front of the T-Rex enclosure and brought them back for my son because, it's not many people who have a T-Rex who's actually been to Jurassic Park. So that's just a unique opportunity.
That's so cool.
No, these things it's just always fun when you can go on sets and see all that behind the scenes stuff. It's unique.
That's got to be a really interesting experience to do. And then, did it all get destroyed? I think so in the movie, right?
Yes, it got destroyed afterwards. I mean, I made sure that our boutique actually stayed intact. And we didn't even pay for that at the time, so it's absolutely minuscule in the movie. But when you look at the final fight scene between T-Rex and Indominus, it's all like in front of our boutique, and there's a big outdoor clock that we put there, the IWC logo. So, but it stayed intact. The Starbucks didn't fare so well next door, and Pandora neither, but we did okay.
That's good. That's great. Jurassic World, let's talk a little bit too. And like I said, I've mentioned a couple of times, you've shown me your collection, and let's talk a little bit about that. Cause, like I've said, you're a legit collector nerd, like a lot of the rest of us. And we'll show some pictures from your collection. I think it's interesting how you display it. Talk about that first, and let's get in. And this is a Hot Wheels and Matchbox collection, is from what I can tell, right?
Yeah, it's almost all Hot Wheels. There's a couple of Matchbox in there when I really love a particular theme that Hot Wheels cover. It's mainly Hot Wheels because I still love the fact that it's more of an interpretation of a car than the sort of quite sort of correct Matchbox translation. So I still prefer that. But on the whole, I'd say what I try to do is mostly contemporary castings. It's not so much vintage stuff or headlines or anything like that. And I try to really go for themes that talk to me and try and find themes in the collection as well. There was a time when Hot Wheels launched a lot of the signature blue in the Ford performance Fords.
Yeah.
And I tried to get as many of those together in the blue and white and get that theme going, or the liveries like Golf and Moon Eyes and all that stuff. And then trying to find different things how I can group them. And from there, I do color code as much as possible, because that's my visual merchandising eye, which requires me to color code and angle code and so on. And I just like to reorganize, and then occasionally Hot Wheels throw a curveball. And sometimes I pick up a car that I think doesn't fit in my collection at all. And I come home and I put 3 cars together in a different way. And I think, wow, that was the missing link. Is that one car that gives a purpose to the other 2. And I never knew, and some other times, stuff changes in terms of how much space you need for a certain category. And then you reorganize it, and suddenly you come across a theme that you've never seen before that makes perfect sense visually.
Right.
And that's sort of the joy of, I guess, displaying, which I don't think you'd ever have if you just put the carded cars up against the wall. You wouldn't see these kind of connections that exist.
Yeah. Again, we'll go and we'll hunt Walmarts, and then also I'm going to hire you as a consultant on coordinating my collection a little bit better, because I've got themes, but the visual side of it I could do better. My wife reminds me of that all the time. Like,
anytime.
A lot of these cars look nice.
Actually inspired me with that, where the Curitiba Customs guys over in Brazil saw pictures of how they display the tarmac work stuff, and they do perfect color coding, sort of rainbow display, and I thought that looked absolutely gorgeous. Typical Brazilian, these guys can just do color, and I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's what you're going to get to one day.
Always a shout out. I lived in Curitiba for a couple of years, and so always nice to have a shout out to Curitiba and to my friends in Brazil, and the plethora of bright colors in that beautiful country. So any reference to Brazil makes me happy. So, and you've got JDM, you've got Ferrari. Sometimes you go by car maker, sometimes you go by theme. Sounds like your collection also serves as for a lot of us too. Like, you just get down there, take it in, and say, I'm gonna switch my brain to this mode and reorganize a little bit there, and the therapeutic side of that, which I think is a real element to this.
It's good stress buster, definitely. A bit of visual merchandising, and you can see, there's a result to what you've done. Sometimes not the result you want, but at least you go to bed and you've done something physical.
So many times I do it too, and then I'm like, and then I'll end up stressing a little bit on, like, is this exactly how it needs to be? And there's no one I could tell if they walked in, like my wife, and say, what are you stressed about? And I say, well, I just don't know where to put these cars in this particular slot, and she'll, kind of laugh and walk away. That's my own problems to resolve, but it's great. Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I hope that we can do this again. This team transport obviously is, people will start slowly but surely making their way out to stores. Obviously, everyone needs to be safe, but this will, and it's in hobby dealers now to buy, and I think it's a really cool story, and I would hope that people kind of get a sense. It's fun to look at the footage of of the actual 300 SL racing at Goodwood, and
we've got this store concept coming up, which will, situation allowing, will open at some point in May, and then we'll have a big event probably in September here in Zurich in Switzerland. We're building a whole home for the classic racing team with the original car on permanent display, and then you have a whole lifestyle concept around it that makes a connection between automotive, has all the unique racing watches in there on display as well, stuff like this, the Boron Carbide GT launch watch in solar beam yellow accents, something we only did 25 of, the original Lewis Hamilton that he wore for the first time. All of that will be on display in that store, and that's we'll hopefully see some more Hot Wheels goodies coming as well a little bit later in the year than for September.
I know not to ever ask about what's coming up, because all that, so I, every time I ask, I kind of get the eye roll from our our friends at Hot Wheels and say, yeah, you'll find in time. So I'm not asking officially, but I will say I hope that we see the IWC name on some other future product. And the store concept sounds awesome. So this has been great. And it's fun to dig in and just to speak to a fellow collector. I could probably go on and on and on, and we could compare notes on our collections, but I'm sure you have some things to do. And but let's stay in contact, and as other things come out, let's share this with collectors. And who knows, we where things are going with you guys and with Hot Wheels, we might have some ample reason to have some fun here in the future. And then of course, if you just ever want to geek out on a collection or whatever and share some stuff that you like, let's come on and do it for sure. Cool.
Thanks, John. It's been amazing. Thank you very much. I'll send you those pics. And yeah, definitely once the lockdown is over, I'm looking forward to making my way to Utah and get to those Walmarts. Looking forward to it.
I am not kidding. You need to come out. We will have some fun. And if you have the family with you and see some national parks, we can really make it happen. So definitely. Awesome.
Thanks,
hey, Chris,
so
thanks a ton. I really appreciate it.
Family, and speak soon. Thanks, John.
You do the same. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.